If it does it again, let me know. I'll be happy to come look at it.
Okay, if we could go ahead and call our meeting back to order.
4.2 when you're looking at these, right?
You go to your table of contents.
Yeah, I tried that a minute ago. Here.
We're going to start back on.
There are other
Like
things.
here says my table, and I'm not on yours, I'm on mine.
You
So,
need to expand this, and there's all your different
all that
items.
time, shame on me, and I think I knew that before.
I'm going to start Ann, and I'm going to turn it over to you, okay?
Good. Okay, we're going to start back on item number 4.2, and Pam Dubois is going to introduce this item for us.
Okay, I've been approached by Ann Cannon and the Foundation of Spay It Forward, and we have worked with them to possibly come to the board to reinstate the spay-neuter program. We have been out of the business for a year and a half. It was a decision made by our Department of Social Services Board when they were looking at reductions into the budget, and a lot of the administrative work to qualify the candidates was running through our Economic Services Department. And that was taking up a great deal of their time in the aspects of when NC Fast was coming on board with food stamps and with Medicaid. We provided you a great deal of information showing you all the statistics and history of the program. And also I have contacted the state of North Carolina and made sure that to reinstate the program, there's no obstacles in the way for us to do that, and had a telephone conversation with the owner and the individual who runs the spay-neuter clinic, because the county would need to contract directly with a clinic to actually perform the services in order to apply for reimbursement. So those obstacles have been taken care of and answered, and then I will turn it over to Ms. Cannon so she can begin discussing the request that she has for you in front of the board.
Thank you for your time. Can you all hear me? We couldn't hear. Okay. Thank you for your time. In sitting here waiting for my turn, I'd see now that what I'm getting ready to talk to you all about, in the large scheme of things, as far as money goes, is very, very small. However, Spay It Forward deals with the ethical and the humaneness of how we manage our animals here in Cabarrus County. So after I explain to you what we're doing, I think you'll understand. Number one, I sent this flyer around to you all. I don't think everyone got one, and I apologize. Please let me begin by stating this final paragraph. Spay It Forward is not asking you all to reimburse us $14,000 worth of expenses. I misprinted that, and meant to say in that paragraph is that the purpose of my being here is to ask for reinstatement of the voucher system for the spay and neuter of families of low income. And so please know that I'm not asking you for $14,000 or $15,000. Okay, Spay It Forward was created originally after much research, finding out that the voucher system was going to be terminated. After much research and with the help of the Department of Social Services, the Health Department, Fred Pelkington, Trish Harris, Trish Baker, Pam, I did a lot of research and visiting with the various agencies to find out how that worked, how the voucher system worked, and understood fully why they asked to terminate it because of the paperwork. So what I decided to do after much research is just form my own organization and get and apply for as charitable status, which it has, and raise money from the community to help people of low income spay and neuter their pets and fill that gap, and hopefully in time prove ourselves worthy of the county reinstating this voucher system. What I found very early on was that not only is there a great need with low-income families to spay and neuter their pets, that the feral and stray cat population in Cabarrus County is just horrible. So the request that we received the applications that were filled out and sent to us, probably 2/3 of our monies, our funds, has been spent spaying and neutering and vaccinating cats that people are feeding and taking care of, and they're strays or ferals. They're feeding them, and these people can barely afford to feed themselves, but they can't stand to see a creature starve to death. So they're feeding these colonies of cats. Anywhere between a number of 5, we have done a colony of 60 that existed in a mobile home park. And these people lived in mobile homes, and they were feeding these cats. So we were able to fund the spay and neuter of 60. And so these people can continue to manage them, and then they live out their life without reproducing. So what we did find out is that people were in need of that. What we also found out was Spay It Forward is literally, it's just a bank account for people in this county to donate to help spay and neuter these pets. We don't have a lot of resources for trapping and for helping people transport these cats. I do have a board member. He is founder and president of Cabarrus Trap and Neuter and Release organization. He's an excellent fellow. He's a cat guru, and he that's what he does. So we helped fund some of the spay and neuter for his cats that he's trapped and neutered for these colonies. Well, people thought that we were supposed to trap them as well. We don't have the resources for that. So what Jimmy and I started doing is explaining to people how they can trap their own stray and feral cats. And doggone if people, oh, I can't do that. When they found out that they could, and that empowered them, and they were excited about it. So Spay It Forward has not only moved from, it's not only helping low-income families, but it's expanded out to helping people trap and spay and neuter their feral cats, which, again, I will say is just as proportionally bad as animals that are strays and ending up in animal control. So what we're going to do now is to we're purchasing traps that are consumer-friendly or user-friendly, and letting people borrow those traps. We're going to let them lend them from maybe the spay-neuter clinic. They've gone to animal control, and animal control can't keep up with the need of people that wanting to trap their own animals, which is wonderful. So we've expanded into that. And I wanted to kind of just go over with you what we've done the first year. In the first year, we have a website. We have created an application for assistance that is simple and is precise. People fill it out. They provide, as listed on the application, their eligibility. We give them eligibility requirements, and if they meet those requirements, if we have the funds, they are approved. I fax the application to the spay-neuter clinic so that they will know the name and the address of that person and the information about what pets they need spayed and neutered, and that they are approved, and that Spay It Forward will pay for the surgeries, and we pay for vaccinations. The voucher system did not pay for that, but what we have found is if you can't afford to spay and neuter your pet, lots of times the vaccinations are very expensive. If they wait until a mobile vaccinator that's cheaper is in the area, in the meantime you have a pregnant cat or a pregnant dog, and then you have babies to contend with. So we have found that even though it's anywhere, it's $10 a vaccination. Rabies are required. So that is by state law. Rabies has to be done if they cannot prove that they are current in their rabies. And then a couple of others, an FERCP for a cat, and then, of course, the Bordetella for a dog. So that's what we have been doing. It's worked out beautifully. I call an applicant up. We go over the application, we go over the requirements and what they need to do the day before, or the night before, and they call the spay-neuter clinic themselves, make the appointment, and they are to they take their pet there. Those that are trapping ferals and strays, Jimmy Hoffman is helping with that. There's also another local TNR group that we're working with, and they help transport if these people can't transport. So, and that's growing, and that's going to get bigger. So this little handout that I sent you, I showed you all, was the total for all of 2014. We have spayed 149 felines. We have neutered 72 felines. We've spayed 23 canines and neutered 10 canines. Total cats that we have altered are 221. Total number of canines are 33. If you'll look down, skip down, the total number of animals altered are 254 animals. We're real proud of that. But if you look at the births of kittens that would have been born in a year's time, had those males and females not been altered, just in 1 year you would have had, and this is a conservative estimate, I always go on the conservative side, I don't want to dramatize things, that prevents the birth of 2,652 kittens just in a year's time, not to include a kitten is able to reproduce in 6 months. So within that year's time, you also have a good many of them that can reproduce again. So this is a conservative estimate. And then the number of puppies prevented in 1 year is 528 puppies. I do count, if you alter a male, that's the same thing as keeping 12 kittens from being born, just as you would a female. A female cat, on the average, can produce 12 kittens in a year, and 12 sounds like a low number because with a female cat, she is either pregnant and nursing or she's in heat and getting pregnant again, just like a rabbit. So, we factor in coyotes and disease and on and on and on. We also have a lot of local people that for years have gone to different food lions and furniture stores, and they live across town, but they go and they feed them. They've been trapping them and paying for the spay and neuter themselves. Those people that are not necessarily low income, are not on any kind of social service or Social Security or anything, what we do now with those people is that we will spay and neuter those cats, but they have to pay for the vaccinations. And we think that's a fair trade. So Spay It Forward raised we've spent $14,427 on the spay and neuter of dogs and cats and vaccinations, which is we've done I think an incredible job with this. The average cost per animal is $57. I won't go into all of that, but I will tell you this, and I do have the figures if you're interested. It saves animal control a considerable amount of money for every animal they do not have to pick up or handle. It saves the county a lot of money. Now, the cat issue is this. Animal control does not go out and trap cats. They don't go out and shoot the cats. They basically cannot really deal with the cats. Now, they will take cats that are brought in, that are surrendered by people, but they don't go, if you have 20 cats in your backyard that you're trying to do something about, animal control will not come out and trap them. And I will defend them with that because a cat, you can usually trap a few cats, but they become very savvy. They're very elusive, very difficult to trap, and it takes days and sometimes weeks to trap one cat. So animal control cannot handle that. So we're basically really doing a great service to the county by going out and helping people decrease the potential population of stray and feral cats. And I think that's all I have. If you have any questions?
Thank you very much, and thank you for being patient with us as we adjusted our agenda. Commissioners, do you have any questions?
So, Ann, tell us a little bit about the fundraising efforts you guys have done.
Okay. We did a little Circus Stella. There's a family, a husband and wife in Kannapolis that have a circus, and they travel across the United States. We had our first Circus Stella benefit last April. We raised $1,500. We had a friend of mine did a little beach party, and people paid to come to her party. We raised about $2,000 with that. We have had people to send $1,000. I had one lady who I don't even know personally, and she isn't even from this county, and she sent $5,000. We have a web page where the application is and all about the Spay It Forward organization is. We did a Santa. Melanie Moore with Concord Animal Clinic did a picture with your pet and Santa and gave us those proceeds as well. We have another Circus Stella slated for April the 11th next year. I mean, this year, actually. This year. It's going to be at Cannon School. We have a kind of a sponsorship situation, and that's where you raise your money from sponsorships. And we've raised about $7,000 already, which is absolutely huge. People get really excited about donating money to spay and neuter because when you spay a cat or a dog, that's an instant result, and a huge instant result. I might add that we work closely with animal control and local rescue groups, with the health department, the Department of Social, all of these agencies refer, also with the Sheriff's Department. We have applications with all those agencies, and if they see someone or see a situation where they think that they could use that service, they give them an application and talk to them about Spay It Forward. We have had 3 different rescue groups send me people who had actually surrendered a litter of puppies, and they needed the female spayed. So 3 of those females that were spayed will no longer be giving puppies to animal control or to rescue groups. Animal control referred a lady that had, these are just examples, a lady that had a cat, a female cat, and she had surrendered the 2nd litter of kittens to animal control, and Dina over at animal control gave her an application, and she filled it out. That cat was spayed the next week, so she will no longer be giving kittens to animal control. People really get excited about it because it's nipping it in the bud, so to speak, and it's just money well spent. It's efficient use of money. There's so much to say about it, and I don't want to bore you with it, but again, it's a very small amount of money in your scheme of things, but it is definitely addressing the humane part of how we treat our animals here in Cabarrus County.
So over the year and a half that this has been this way, how do you feel like y'all have kept up with the demand? I mean, of what's out there?
Well, first of all, we have met anyone that's applied. No one's been turned away. Actually, no one has been turned away. And I did actually have a situation where a fella had a Rottweiler and a pit bull, both females, that wanted to use Spay It Forward services, and he couldn't afford to have both of those females done. Well, those are bully breeds. Those puppies it's very difficult to adopt out bully breed puppies out of animal control and from rescue groups. So I said, well, you really don't qualify, but if you'll pay 2/3 of it, Spay It Forward will help with the other 1/3. And He got it done. And at the end of the day, that's what's important, most important. Let's see, I was going to add one more thing, and thank you for your questions, Diane, because it really does help me address other things. Oh, I know what I wanted to tell you. Spay It Forward has had a year under its belt. We have raised over $15,000. We have done a huge, in my opinion, made a huge impact on the numbers of potential unwanted animals that would be born. The application that we created is an excellent way of determining eligibility. That's worked beautifully. The paperwork is down to a minimum. I'm the one doing 99% of it. It's efficient. It's easy. It's a collaboration of lots of agencies here in Cabarrus County. That's what's been so exciting, as if people are working together to get this done. It's going to grow, especially, like I said, in the feral situation that we have here in Cabarrus County. People go, oh my gosh, thank you so much for doing this. And lots of little ladies, little older ladies that love their cats, that can't afford, and they're feeding them, and it's so heartwarming to be able to help people in that way, because when you fix their pets so that they can maintain and they don't have to worry about puppies and kittens, it means a lot to some of these people that have very little left, and their pets are everything to them. So that's, you can't put a price on that, in my opinion. I think that's it.
Great. Any additional questions? Great.
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. Many years ago, this goes to Ann Cannon's heart for animals. Many years ago, I stopped at the Exxon station on the corner of Highway 73 and Gold Hill Road to gas my car, and I pulled up behind a Jeep-like vehicle. And it was full of dogs. Full of dogs. I had no idea. You couldn't even see if they had a driver in it. And out of the front seat comes Ann to gas the car. She has rescued animals over and over and over, and don't ever tell her that you lost your animal, because she'll start letting you know about possibilities that she has for your next animal. So I just want to say thank you for your heart and all your many, many years of working on this problem.
You've been a good friend to them, too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time. And
Thank you. Thank you for being with us tonight. Liz, did you have something?
Yeah, I agree with you that this is like the poster person for how we all should give back to our community, and taking not just an interest in our community, but actually making a difference. And you have definitely made a difference. And you've brought together a lot of different people for a united cause. And so I do appreciate all that. I have a question of maybe for Pam. Just procedurally, by funding this, we're going to fund a voucher. So you will determine with your application who qualifies. You will give them the voucher. They will take it to the spay-neuter clinic on Church Street. Then the spay-neuter clinic will send to you.
They'll invoice us monthly on every animal they spayed, neutered, and then we will turn in reimbursement from the state. And depending on how much money every quarter that's in the pot for the 3-tier counties, we will get reimbursed based on the monies that are in there. So we will cut a check directly to the spay-neuter clinic based on the vouchers that they received. And the way this is established, it will not exceed $15,000. And we've conservatively budgeted about $5,000 worth of reimbursements, approximately about 33%, based on the history that we placed in there, because it just depends on how many people buy the animal license tags and how much money's in the pot and how many counties applied for reimbursement as to how much money you get. So it could go either way. And it used to be up to $35,000 was the latest number that we had back when DHS had it at the very last end of their program. But we had a conversation to set it at a level of $15,000.
Yeah, but if during the year we find out that there's more funds available, then you would come back and let us know that if there's 20,000 available, we would be able to adjust and apply for more refunds?
We can update you and let you know what the reimbursement rates is
Yeah.
each quarter to give you an idea of how it's going.
Okay.
And Pam sent me some wonderful information because I was really ignorant about how all this voucher system worked and how they appropriated the funds for it. Thus, that terrible that sentence, I really wish I could strike it from the bottom, because Pam came over and, oh, Lord have mercy, no, I didn't mean that. But the voucher system works on a very, you all may know, but I learned that, we probably won't get $15,000. We won't. But every little bit helps. And so I'm going to try to get what we can, but, $15,000 is a lofty. That's just what I figured that Pam and I came up with, because that's what we have spent doing it. And we'll continue to raise money, and Spay It Forward will continue to exist and grow. The whole idea is to get the county's kind of the support of the organization, of what we're doing, not necessarily of Spay It Forward, but what we are doing, and then supplement. And when I say supplement, of course, Spay It Forward will not receive any of the funds, but help us to be able to service the low-income families first, which we've done all along. Excuse me. Is that me? Okay. Sorry. I got too excited, I guess. But it would supplement Spay It Forward to allow us to spend more money on ferals as well. And ferals and strays are considered pets as well of low-income families, but it just helps us to be able to broaden what we can do. That's all.
So I'm going to ask one more question,
Okay.
and I'm going to stop. But first of all, I want to compliment you, too, because I have a soft spot for animals, so
Yeah.
I appreciate what you do. The only other question I have is on the letter you sent, it said that Spay It Forward primarily limits its services to Cabarrus County, though it has responded to a few requests from Rowan and Stanley. If the $15,000 was given, would that be specific to Cabarrus
I think it would have to be.
residents? Right, just making sure. Okay, thank you.
And what I'm trying to do, as we grow and I get better at this, I'd love for other counties to be able to raise their own money. And if they have to do it through, instead of reinventing another 501c3 for every county, work it so that they can raise their own money, funnel it through Spay It Forward, but that money would be earmarked for that county. We would not use that money. I have friends in neighboring counties in the rescue world, and they're screaming for it. They need it, I need to also add this. Rescue groups, 90% of the animals that go into rescue groups are animals that were on the streets or owner surrenders. They are not necessarily in animal control. Sometimes people think that rescue groups don't do their part, but they actually are getting the animals before they ever enter animal control, and that's a huge bonus. So that's why a lot of rescue groups do not pull a whole lot of animals from animal control. They're full because they've taken them off the streets before they get there. And so rescue groups are really excited about the spay-neuter thing, because rescue groups cannot pay for someone else's dogs. They're a 501c3 in a rescue in different situations, so they can't fund someone else's dogs, but Spay It Forward can if they qualify. So that's a big help too.
Great. Thank you so much for
Thank
being
you
with
all.
us. Okay, the next item on our agenda, and we're back in order now at 4.4, and that is North Carolina Association of County Commissioners submission of federal legislative priorities, and we'll let Mike introduce that.
Yeah, this won't take long. As you know, the Association of County Commissioners, they have a legislative agenda that they adopt every year, and prior to that adoption, they get input from the 100 counties. They do it on the state level and they do it on the federal level. It's the time of the year for the federal. As you know, the NACO, the National Association of Conferences, or Counties conference is next month, so they're preparing to have this put together by that time. The list that you have there, we polled all of our department heads, and we had a couple to respond, but they fell into these general categories that the state or that the association already established last year and are promoting again this year. So you've had the list. If you've had an opportunity to look at that, pretty much every one of these categories is relevant in our county. Every one of them are. And so if there's one in there that you don't support, we can pull it off, or if there's something else that you don't see on there, we can add to it. But if you feel comfortable with this current list, then this is what we can forward on to the association under your name as well.
Great. And I have looked over the list very carefully and do agree with them. Any other questions or comments? Due to, excuse me, go ahead.
No, I was, so there's a couple items that we have. The first one says 2014 NCACC federal issues.
This is federal.
Okay.
This is what we're talking about.
Right. There you have that list, and then 2 pages over, we have item number 1 is about the library system.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
That one's not on the previous list.
Right, those are the ones, excuse me, these are the ones that were issued or submitted by our department heads.
So is
So I would
the,
add these to that.
okay, that's what I wanted to make sure. The recommendation is to take the first list, add to it the ones that our departments have suggested that they be added, so we would be expanding it. I think that's fine, and I would like to, when you look over this, or if you have a conversation with Joanna at NCACC, if there's any ambiguities, make sure she understands. And the reason I say that is the ones that we sent up for our state list, there were 2 times she called. One time she got me and one time she didn't, and she was trying to get an explanation of what we meant by sending that forward, and I felt certain she had talked to you also. So we want to make sure that, because they were having a committee meeting, and they were saying, what does Cabarrus mean for whatever it was? And so we want to make sure that those that we add to the list are as clear as they can be so that they're not confused when they get it. I think some of the state ones, because they had been carried over from years past, I figured that they understood them correctly, but the statements were not really spelled out all the way. So I think these were spelled out pretty well, or explained, instead of just saying library funding. It explains what the library funding amount is, and I think we need to make sure that that's in there.
So Chairman Morris, based on our requested action, I would make a motion to suspend the rules to vote on this.
Okay, do we have a second to that motion? Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to suspend the rules and vote on this tonight, say aye. All opposed, no. Motion passes. And then we would need a motion to approve these goals to be submitted.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that we approve the list of federal legislative priorities, including the ones that County Manager Downs had from his departments for submission to NCACC.
Great. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item, 4.5, and this would be adoption services fee schedule, and we have Mr. Rose and company here to talk to us.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for your time tonight. For this agenda item, we're here to request the adoption of a proposed fee schedule for services that we provide to families for private adoptions. Under North Carolina general statutes, we can establish and charge reasonable fees for pre-placement assessments and court reports for private adoption services. The law provides this provision because private adoptions, while not our mandate, are a key and critical part in getting permanence for children. And while there are private agencies that provide this, DSSs can provide it as well too. This is a request or a move that most counties have been going towards to charge for these fees. Basically, the goal here is we're not trying to compete with private agencies. We actually had an internal committee to meet, and we talked about what we felt were reasonable fees, and that was based on data we had collected both from other DSS agencies, especially in this area, as well as what private agencies are charging. Our goal here is to, again, not compete with private agencies, but be able to provide that service if needed. Our mandated services are first and foremost in our department. And of course, we deal with children in custody and moving them towards adoption on a regular basis. But we do get requests for private pre-placement assessments and doing court reports, as well as we get requests from other states or other counties on occasion. So when we met, this in-house group included myself and Ms. Harris and some supervisor and a worker, program manager, so we had a good collective discussion and a good debate and got to a point where we developed this proposed fee schedule. One of the priorities that or really two priorities that we put in this is, number one, that we will first and foremost serve children that have been in our custody without charging. So if we had a situation, let's say, where we had a child in our custody, we moved them to permanence through guardianship, and 2 years later, those parents want to move towards adoption, we will provide that service and not charge that family. Another goal or priority that we put in here as well, too, that you hopefully see in the policy is that we can offer a reduced rate based on certain situations financially. Of course, one of the factors that you assess when you do adoptions is financial health of the family doing the adoption, but there are circumstances where lower income families may want to adopt, and if that's the case and they are an approved household, we would do it at a reduced rate. So that's what we're requesting in this agenda item, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions, commissioners?
The only question I have is, how does that compare with the fees prior to? I didn't really find that where they were before.
This is new.
Okay, so it's
These
all
are
new.
new
Okay,
fees, correct.
okay.
We've never charged for this service when we have done it. Now, I'll be honest with you, we haven't done it much, but we now do have, Ms. Harris has worked through some reorganization and retooling. We've kind of pulled together an adoption worker now that we have. Of course, that adoption worker, again, their focus is our kids in custody. But this is a service that if we have a situation where we can help get a child permanence and they're struggling, or they wanted the service from us, we can now provide it, but we can recoup the cost since it is not a mandate that we have. And again, this is allowable under general statutes.
Other questions? I had some concerns about it until I read that last sentence that says, Cabarrus County DHS retains the sole discretion of reducing or waiving any fee if circumstances exist that would prevent a family from paying such fees, and delaying the adoption service would cause undue hardship on the well-being of the child. So I feel like that covers any concerns that I might.
And yes, that was a big part of our discussion,
Right.
and having that discretion in our hands.
Great. Okay, any additional questions? If not, I think you have the next item, which is 4.6,
Yeah.
Community Alternatives Program.
We'll trade Cheryl for
divestment.
Kathy. And again, this item on the agenda here is a request that we are bringing forward to you for approval. The request is for us as an agency to start the divestment of CAP services, which is the Community Alternatives Program. Community Alternatives Program is a Medicaid-funded service. The primary objective of CAP is to allow Medicaid-qualified applicants who are nursing home level of care the ability to stay at home and get care at home without going into a nursing home. Of course, there's two benefits to that. Number one, they get to stay at home. If you've been to a nursing home, no one wants to go to a nursing home. And this program does allow them to provide, to get that care at home and try to prevent that placement as long as possible. The other benefit that the program does bring is, of course, cost savings to the Medicaid program as a whole. Nursing home care is probably $5,000 to $7,000 a month. CAP program is much, much less than that. We have, in Cabarrus County, the state allocates slots for CAP services. We have 177 slots available for CAP clients. And we, as a department, Department of Human Services, we are the lead agency, and we coordinate all the case management services and the care plans for CAP clients. We're asking to divest of this service for two primary reasons. Our agency operates the CAP program with the understanding of it being cost neutral. However, revenue has been shrinking, especially over the past 3 years, with cuts in Medicaid, cuts in case management time that we can claim, and cuts in fees. We are actually operating in a negative last year, and we are projected again to be operating in a negative this year as well. So that is definitely an area of concern for us. CAP services can be provided in the private sector, and often they can be provided at a much lower cost. And since the private sector is out there and providing these services in many counties, we feel like we could probably turn this service back over to the private sector. The service would still remain intact, clients would still receive the service, but it would probably be more cost-effective in the end, being from a private agency. In addition, we do have identified needs within the agency based on mandated services and increased service levels that we could reallocate resources currently working in this program to help with those services. Therefore, we would not put anyone out of a job. With these trends and the trend, and additionally the administrative burden that has been placed on us with CAP services, especially billing and getting reimbursement, we have basically had to dedicate one person to that whole process because of the NC Tracks system. We just don't feel this is a good way, a good business model going forward for the county to continue to be the lead agency and be the direct provider of these services. With these services available in the private sector, we feel like this would be a good time to start this process to divest. The process would basically, if you approve the divestment, would basically have us informing the state of our plans, and then we would work with the state to identify a private provider, or at least we would have input. They have the final call on the private provider, but they would ask for input from us based on our experience and our knowledge of the area. And we would make those recommendations, and then they would move forward with selecting a provider, and then we would be transitioning with the state to move clients from our services to the private provider. So our request again is, to basically approve the recommendation to divest.
Great. Thank you. Questions?
So what is the timeline as far as if we approve this on January 20th? How quickly do you notify the state? How quickly do they move towards transitioning? Is it 6 months? Is it 3 months?
No, I think it could probably be less than 6 months. We would basically, the next day would let the state know. There are private providers in this area already doing the service, so I believe with that in place, the transition time could be less than 3 months, potentially. Now, it of course, would depend on the state and how quickly they move from, but I would not envision more than 6 months, probably more 3 to 4 months.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Rose. The clients that are receiving this service, will there be any lapse in their service during the transition?
No, we would work it with the state so there's no lapse. And we would be working in coordination with the private provider that was selected as well, too.
And it would not affect the client financially?
No, the services are Medicaid funded.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, our next item is 4.7, Susan Fearington, a small capital projects update.
And we're preparing to close our Lomax Farm project in our capital small projects fund, and with that in mind, we're going to have a little bit of excess that we want to move to our local agriculture preservation project. So what you have is a budget amendment attached and a project ordinance to approve to move the leftover money for the Lomax Farm into the local agriculture preservation project. Also in the budget amendment is updates for some revenues and expenditures for interest income and maybe some adjustments. Once a year we have to look at, this is a multi-year fund, so once a year we have to look at the fund and update it for anticipated, maybe we over budgeted our interest income, or we didn't budget enough. So this is, this budget amendment also addresses those issues for soil and water, register of deeds, and elections. So sort of a catch-up budget amendment and project ordinance. Any questions?
Questions? Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, next item is 4.8, Lundy Covington's. Talk to us about benefit accrual for full-time elected positions.
Good evening. What I would like to bring to you this evening is a recommended personnel ordinance change. HR was asked to look at the benefits for elected full-time positions that include the sheriff and the register of deeds. The items we looked at included sick leave, vacation leave, and a few compensation practices, including COLAs and merits. We reached out to counties through our School of Government listserv, and the data that we received did not indicate there was any unanimous practice. There were definitely variations, but most did provide vacation benefits, and Cabarrus County does not provide that. What we propose doing is an increase actually to the sick leave benefit, and the reason for that is to kind of adjust and put both of those benefits together. In practice, sick leave is not an often used benefit. It actually has more value in the retirement segment. Employees are allowed to carry over 20 sick days, and that equals 1 month of equivalent retirement time. What we are proposing is a graduated schedule of benefits, much like we use for other types of vacation and sick leave accruals. That means that someone who is 5 years or less of employment is going to have a different benefit than somebody who's been here 20 years or more. So the schedule, I believe, was included with the materials, but we ask that you add this to your consent agenda and allow us to make the change to the ordinance that would support the changes for the two positions mentioned. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, any questions? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is, I'm losing, the 4.9, Jonathan Marshall, Infrastructure and Asset Management, CIP process.
So this is, for some of you, this is going to be repetitive, some old hat. Others, this may be the first time you've heard about it, and you're all, I'm guessing, in between. Each year for Christmas, our finance department is nice enough to hand us this lovely Cabarrus County budget manual. That, in fact, is not the beginning of our budget process. We begin our budget process with requests for departments to identify capital improvement plan projects. Those are projects defined as being over $100,000. And to Commissioner Minot's question about planning for the future, they should not appear in next year's budget. So these are items that they've identified that are some years out. It could be 3, 5, or beyond that have been identified are needs for the county. So we ask department heads to put these together, and that may be based on the updated park plan. It could be parkland in the northeast part of the county that's projected to be 6 or 7 years from now that they add that CIP item and a description of it. The items will come to you during your budget process, and you'll get more detail on them. But then as we go through budgets in the succeeding years, they will move. Some of them will move closer. Some of them will stay more than 5 years out, and I'm going to give you a few examples. But they will gradually move closer, and then when we get to that budget that you're considering will be something that you would adopt. So for instance, we've been in this building since 1990, and there are 2 chillers that serve this building. Neither of them have been replaced. We had identified that one would need to be replaced, and it will be something that you will be considering. It's been working its way forward, and something you will consider with the adoption of your 2016 budget. We know the other one is probably 3 years after that, so that is a new item in the CIP. It'll show up in fiscal year 2019 and do the same thing. Those are items approximately $165,000 each. So you can see it has a great deal of it's a lot of money. So it's something you want to plan for and want to know that it's coming. That pales in comparison to a courthouse replacement, estimated at this point from some initial studies we had done at $60 million. And again, that's going to depend very much on design, location, and a number of other things. That is more than 5 years out at this point. But the things you've heard tonight, that is going to reach a point sometime soon when it starts into that pipeline, and it is exactly 5 years, then 4, and gets closer. In addition to that, one item that is starting to move forward is a parking deck for downtown. With the increase in demand for parking for our courthouse, for our sheriff's office, for our own offices, we had identified a need for a parking deck located on our surface lots between Spring and Barbrick. That item is starting to move forward in your process, where you'll see the design fees for that moving forward, and it'll actually start ticking through that 5-year process. This is all part of the planning that you do. You're not committing that money by adopting that when they're in those out years, but you know that when it gets to that budget year where it is anticipated to be built, that will come before the board for a commitment. So we want to just give you an idea that that is a process we go through. It is very much a deliberative process. I've already gone out within the last week with some of our finance staff who are working on budget and discussed some of these items with particularly our ALPS department. We will go out and talk to them about other departments as we look at these if we have questions and have specific meetings with them. There are also projects that fall below $100,000, and infrastructure and asset management, many of those are construction and renovation projects, things that may be, one of the examples that's been proposed is the remodeling of the front desk at the Kannapolis Library, where we'll go out and meet with those individual departments. We send every department a questionnaire. They identify projects like that. We set up a time to meet with them, get a better idea what that project is, and then use contractors and resources that we have to estimate what the cost of that is. Occasionally, some of those will come up where it actually exceeds that level and we know it's a CIP, and then it will go through that longer range process. You will see all of this again. This is just a very brief introduction. You'll see all of this again as we get into your budget workshops. We'll be presenting to you what is recommended for this budget year, but we'll also present to you some of those items that are new, that have come into the process, and show you about where we think they'll fall. And so you begin to be able to do your 5-year planning with that, 5-year and beyond.
Yeah, and we would prefer, as they start progressing, that we have a funding source identified for you. If it's cash, it'll show, Pam and Susan will show it in that 5-year plan where we're going to pay cash. If we're having to take on debt for it, you'll see that debt start showing up in a particular year in your 5-year plan. So, as Jonathan said, the other big building would be if we chose to build another human services building. Right now, I don't think that's what we will advise you to do. We would probably recommend that you don't. We were looking to extend that lease at least another 5 years, and that will get us to 22. Does it end in 15 or 17? You guys know?
Just re-up recently.
Yeah, so it might be 17 is when it is. Yeah, so we may go ahead and try to lock that in for an additional 5 years, knowing that it's probably a $30 or $40 million building if we build it to the size that it needs to house 350 employees, or maybe by the time we build that new building, it might be multiple buildings all over the county versus one large building. So, but those are two large ones, as Jonathan said, the parks, and as we need to start looking for future school sites. If the board so chooses, we also need to start looking for future park sites. We might not develop those parks immediately, but land is not getting any cheaper, and and those are large parcels, even larger than school parcels. So, you'll see it happen, and we'll explain it more that first night of your retreat, especially for those of you who are new to the county budgeting process. You'll see it, and it'll start every year. It'll start going right in, and they'll start moving forward, and you'll see how it impacts your tax rate, whether it's being paid with cash, and not only the capital costs, we will plug in those operational costs as well. You'll start seeing, okay, we're going to build it this year, and then the next year you're going to see employees show up, and you're going to see other things start showing up in that 5-year plan as it progresses through. So your question was very timely earlier.
Well, I have a follow-up to that. Do we have coordination with the schools in order to mesh those things together so that overall the commissioners will know what costs are for both the governmental services and the schools.
We are working on moving in that direction to have it a little bit better process, because for a long time we've been operating in two different
worlds.
areas. Yes,
You're right, and that's caused issues.
mm-hmm. Sure.
There is, in fact, an education category. The key is getting good information in there for you. That's part of, I think, the superintendent mentioned we're working on the 10-year plan, or actually I believe the chair of the board had mentioned we're working on a 10-year plan. That's always been a 15-year plan. That was deliberate that we went to 10 years because there just becomes so much unknown from that 10 to 15, and they're adopting them. When we're in a growth period like we are now and beginning just to ramp back up, you need to adopt it more often. You're not going to wait 10 years to adopt a new plan. You're going to redo that every couple of years. So we're looking at 10 years now with that, and then incorporating those into the financial projections we're making for you. There are, as Mike said, it also is divided by funding source. So there's another fund that will appear, and you'll see, and that is that when properties are in the present use value, when they're taxed at their present use value rather than highest and best use, they pay, of course, at a lower rate. When they leave that program, so if it's farmland and it's sold for a subdivision and it leaves that program, they are responsible for paying taxes for 3 years in arrears, or that difference, that increment. Some time ago, the Board of Commissioners determined that those funds, those back taxes should be put into a separate fund. Because we have properties leaving farmland, the funds were set aside to promote preservation of farmland and agricultural activities. So there may be things that come up in this plan, and we will designate that that is something that should actually come from those funds as they accumulate. And we'll come back to you with more information on that.
Great. That was very helpful. Probably would have been more helpful if we'd have done it in the proper order as on our agenda. Do you have something else, Liz?
Yes. Are you communicating with our other school systems, Rowan Cabarrus Community College and Kannapolis City Schools, to make sure that they are also coming up with a 10-year plan, so that, because obviously we fund 3 different educational systems, and all 3 systems need to be equally represented, not equally, but appropriately represented in our plan?
We do. Of course, you see at your budget time their immediate capital requests. We are always requesting their future capital requests, so we can do just that.
It would be good if somehow in this process, if all 3 can get a similar format to you, Susan's over there, so that when it comes to us, we can understand it and it can truly mesh, because you're right. It hasn't meshed before, and then we get blamed because we can't do something that we didn't know we needed to do, or we think we're getting ready to do one thing and then something else shifts in priorities. And I know things shift, but it makes it very hard to catch that moving target. So we need to make sure, and maybe that's something for the summit whenever we all meet, that we mention that it's not just us and one system, it's all 4 of us. When it looks at education, all 4 entities need to be talking together often to make sure that that works correctly in our plan.
And Cabarrus County Schools does follow our format. They are utilizing the same system that we have. We just need to work on the dollar figure that with what they request, because they can't complete that amount of money that they ask for within 1 year. So we've got to get it down to what can you actually do within this fiscal year.
Okay, next item is 4.10. Jonathan again.
It seems like I'm often coming to you and talking about either selling property or donating property, transferring property. This is a case where the City of Concord had put up a metal storage building behind our EMS station number 2. That's the station across 49 from Central Cabarrus High School. They had put a metal building behind there while they were building their permanent station on Old Charlotte Road, and it housed an engine. Obviously, when they moved into their new station, they didn't have any need for it, but they retained that asset. We've been able to use it for EMS and sheriff storage. We found out that it had not been transferred and nothing had been determined what would happen with that asset when we needed to change the electrical service. They had actually been paying our electric bills too. They took it before their city council. The city council has, because it is an asset under $30,000, passed a resolution to transfer it to Cabarrus County, and this is simply an item before you to accept that asset. It is of great use to us. It needs some work, and we've already had that assessed.
Thank you. Any questions? Next item, 4.12, Jonathan again.
And Mr. Cook can help with this one. We will be advertising the intent to exchange property related to the Wallace Park, but there will also be a resolution that you will need to pass based on the statute that would come before you at your regular meeting in January.
That pretty well sums it up. We will have published that notice in the meantime so that you'll be ready to act on it, on the resolution, on the 20th.
Great. And of course, we have discussed this previously. Item 4.13, Jonathan.
This is an item that I brought before you. It's related to the construction or replacement of Mount Pleasant Middle School. That is the closure of a segment of North Drive. You have passed a resolution declaring your consideration of intent to close that. That same resolution is going before the Mount Pleasant Commissioners this month. That by the calendar and by our work with Dennessee DOT, it should go before the Board of Transportation to consider abandonment of maintenance at their meeting at the beginning of February. So what we're suggesting is that you schedule a public hearing for your regular meeting in February. It does have a more extensive advertising requirement. We are required to send registered notice to all property owners on North Drive who would be affected by that, and we would consider that anyone on North Drive and some smaller roads that come off of that. We'll post 2 signs there, and then also do advertisement in consecutive weeks in the newspaper. We'll coordinate that as best we can, depending on the hearing dates, with the town of Mount Pleasant so that we can do dual advertising, particularly with those registered letters, that we can send a single registered letter notifying them of both hearings, because they'll also be considering this to the greatest extent that we can. If they're too far apart, then we wouldn't be able to do that. But I think we should be able to coordinate our advertising, and certainly we do the sign work for them also.
Great. Excellent. Any questions on that?
Just one quick, Mr. Chairman, and Jonathan, if the board decides to go along with this and relinquishes allows the closure to take place, it will only take place from wherever the cul-de-sac is forward, is that right?
That's right. It would only be that portion that needs to be closed where the school is going to be replaced.
And will the state still maintain the other portion?
Yes, they will.
I just want to make sure we got clarity for viewing audience.
It is only that portion that needs to be abandoned for the school construction. There will, in fact, be a turnaround, and the remainder of North Drive will continue to be maintained by the state.
Answered my question. Thank you very kindly.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Next item is 4.14, and Kelly Sifford.
Thank you. Just coming before you to request permission to put in a, getting tired, can't even speak now, to make application to the state for the weatherization and HARP programs. We have to come to you annually to get permission to do that. For the new ones, the program, they tell us how much we're getting each year. We have an application process that we go through, and they get later and later each year, so I just go ahead and come to you early to ask for permission so we can get our application in on time when they do release the numbers. I suspect that they will be somewhat similar to what we have this year, which is 31 units for weatherization and 15 for HARP. Are there any questions?
So if we don't vote to do this, what happens to that funding? Is this one of those that then goes to other counties?
No, it would not go to other counties. They would look for a service provider in our county.
Okay.
There is currently not anybody who does the service in our county, and the service providers near us have not been very effective. But they would look to get somebody else to serve Cabarrus County.
Great. Any additional questions? Thank you, Kelly. Next item, Kelly's going to do this one as well, 4.16.
Sorry, Dennis and his crew are at their annual conference, so I told
Okay.
him I would cover this for him. This item is for a request to put in an application for a grant with the State Clean Water Trust Management Trust Fund to protect 78 acres that include the state-designated Soothers Wet Prairie, which is a significant natural heritage area, in partnership with the Land Trust for North Carolina and the Plant Conservation Program in the North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. They believe this to be one of the top natural heritage sites in this funding cycle. We expect and we hope that the Plant Conservation Program in North Carolina will be the eventual likely owner and manager of this site. The site is known actually nationally for diverse plants that are found there. Seed companies from Pennsylvania and other areas actually come here to harvest the seeds off of this property, and they are used in wetland protection. They're very important and unique. This site was listed in our 2002 inventory of natural heritage areas and is also listed with the USDA. Dennis has provided me with all kinds of information regarding the site, but it does have very significant grasses and flowers that are being harvested and studied, and we've put a lot of effort over the years into preserving this area and to studying this area. So what they're requesting is the $249,000 that we have that has been set aside in the last two cycles for the conservation easements and prime farmland conservation. They're requesting that we are able to use that as the $249,000 as match for this particular property, and we'll be applying to the state for the rest of the money to purchase that. Are there any questions?
I don't have a question. I just want to say that I have had the privilege to go out on that piece of property. I think they say it's one of the very few original prairie lands left in this part of the country. And I was there when all those little flowers were blooming. It is a treasure, and we need to do whatever we possibly can to preserve that property.
I'm doing my best to convey the importance of it. Dennis could do a much better job at explaining this, but it is a real treasure, and it is a very, very significant site, not only in Cabarrus County and the state, but in the region and the United States. It's an extremely important area.
As Jonathan described to you earlier, the money that's funding this is money that is tax revenues from farms that had sold in the past. So it's a present use, but it's a present use fund, but we moved it into a different fund for projects like this. So, however, they weren't able to expend the money before they come to you as a board to do that. And this is a fantastic project.
A couple of other comments. Louis Souther, it's his property, and he absolutely guards that property, and he protects it. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that UNCC botany students come out to that site and help harvest those seeds, and so it's got all kinds of benefits.
There
It's
are
really
a number of
treasure.
different agencies that are involved in preservation of that site and in harvesting the seeds. And like I said, it's just an extremely rare piece of property. It's a natural piece of property. That was a natural prairie. It was not something that was man-made. So we have a real strong opportunity to be able to permanently save this site. And Lewis has been kind enough to consider it, so we would love to be able to move forward with this.
But in that farmland preservation vein, the seeds are also used in Cabarrus County. The Soil and Water District has a seed drill, so people can take these seeds for these native warm season grasses and sow them in lieu of fescue on their pasture land to reintroduce this. It's actually more it's native. It's much more sustainable for their properties.
Okay, any additional questions? Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
And another item that is not on our agenda, but at our last regular meeting, we had asked for some additional information on the situation regarding sea mud and the sludge that's being spread. Have you had an opportunity, Rich, to get any additional information on that?
I have, but I haven't completed it. We've done some research, and I think that based on what I've been able to determine up to this point, that this particular area of regulation has been totally preempted by the state, meaning that we cannot do any local regulation in that area. There's a case from back in 2007 that seems to speak directly to that. That's not to say that there can't be other things that can be done, but we would not be able to pass an ordinance that would regulate it on a local basis. It's been the state has reserved that kind of regulation unto themselves. So we don't know that pretty confidently. I haven't been able to shepherdize all the cases subsequent cases that cite that 2007 case, just to be sure, but a preliminary review of them indicates that there's been no change in the status of that holding. It hasn't been distinguished or reversed. So I think we know that up to this point. That's not to say that there aren't some other things that the board could potentially consider. Certainly can contemplate petitioning the legislature in some fashion to ask them to change those rules in some way or change those statutes in some way to allow some local option or regulation, which they do in other areas. Concealed carry being one of the areas in which there's been some carve out for local regulation as opposed to it being all state. But that would be one thing that would be available. Certainly, there have been rules that have been promulgated incident to the basic statutes themselves. Those are administered under NC Diener. There may be some ability to monitor their enforcement of those rules or their implementation of them on a local basis. And then certainly, in other ways expressing, how you feel about this particular issue, whether it be directly to the legislature or to the state in some capacity is another option. But the ability to actually pass a local ordinance to provide some additional protection, if that's what was contemplated, that's something that does not appear to be an option that would be available to you.
Thank you. Yes?
Friday is the legislative breakfast, so we would have an opportunity with our legislative delegation at that time. As the chair, I think you said you're planning on going to it?
I actually will be at a conference
That's
in
right, you'll be
Winston-Salem.
gone. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll be at it.
Right.
So, I guess if, I don't know, or all of y'all are going to the other one, right? Okay. So,
And
it's you
Liz,
and me, hey, together again.
I think that date may be changing too.
Oh, really?
Just heard tonight because the representatives, there's a meeting or something where most of the representatives aren't going to be able to come to the legislative breakfast. Therefore, there may be a change in date, so
Okay.
just FYI.
Well, if it's Friday, then I can, if it stays on Friday, if everybody would agree, I'll get with Rich and kind of review what you just said and see if I can formulate a appropriate question, comment to ask of them concerning this issue. If it's moved to a later date so that all of us can attend it, then I would ask that as chair that you formulate a question or comment or statement, because how this was brought up to us is that Representative Pittman has said that we do have the authority to do something, and we don't, not at least in that way. So I think that would be an appropriate venue to ask the question of all three of them And I wouldn't suggest that we lead them into saying, change the law, but at least get them to bring it up as one of our items, since that's what the purpose of that legislative breakfast. So whether it's Friday or another date, I think that would be an appropriate time for us to have a discussion with them.
I agree. I think that would be an excellent way to approach it. And so when we find out what that final date is, we can make those plans.
Is there any update on the public hearing?
In fact, I tried to get it the latest and greatest this morning. I left a message with Mr. Risgard with Diener and for him to call back, and I haven't got that return call. So he's typically good about calling back within about 24 hours. So hopefully I'll get it tomorrow, and I'll get that word out to you.
Great. Okay, next is approval of our regular meeting agenda, which you have before you. If I understood correctly, there was a desire to move item 4.11 off of the, well, let's see, it's not that item number, be item number 7 on our consent agenda, down to be G4 on new business. There was some additional information requested there. Does anybody else have any other comments or concerns?
On that particular item, Mr. Chairman, I don't think we were able to get all of that information that's going to be requested within that 2 weeks.
I think there was.
That's right.
I have notes on how you would like the agenda item changed. So the other option, if you want to leave it on your consent agenda, I've made notes and I'll change that agenda item to read as Commissioner Poole requested for the appropriate action. If that does not meet what you want, then it could be switched to the new business that night. That'd just be another option.
Well, the idea was to get the architect to proceed with the drawing, go ahead and approve the architect proceeding with the drawings and being able to get some, you want to read what you wrote and some estimates?
So motion to authorize design services and informal bidding for additional office renovation and construction for the courthouse and courthouse annex. And then I added a note, the total projected cost will be presented with funding recommendation after bids are received. Those will be presented back to the commission.
So I'm okay with it staying on consent if that's what the item is. If the item stays as it was presented tonight, then I would want it moved to new business.
Great. Well, we'll have an opportunity to look at that on our agenda for our regular meeting, and then if there are any concerns, we can adjust it at that time. Right. Any other comments or concerns? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the regular meeting agenda as presented. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed, no.
And you want to make a comment for anybody that listens to this meeting that our meeting will be on a Tuesday night because of the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday on that Monday, so.
That is
Folks
correct.
won't show up on Monday the 19th, they'll show up on Tuesday the 20th.
That's right. Tuesday, January the 20th will be the date of our next regular meeting.
I had one other thing.
Yes, ma'am.
We have a moment of silence for that meeting. That will be for 2. Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Richardson is one of those. Okay.
Great. Is there any other matters that need to come before the board before we entertain a motion to adjourn? If not. Okay. Have a motion. Do I hear a second? Motion and second. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Thank you very much.